Good morning, everyone. Smiley here. How you doing? Let's have a little look, see if we're in the right place. Happy Monday. I want to talk to you about love. I actually want to talk to you about healthy love today. So hang on, let me just check that we're in the right place. Come on in and say hi if you're around, or if you've got any questions for me. This is a topic that's coming up a lot in coaching. It is, psychologists or counsellors will refer to it as codependency or enmeshment or poor emotional boundaries. I can see myself talking. So I went to my therapist recently, and we were talking about how my boundaries have got much better because I've been learning how to set them, and I never had them growing up. I was enmeshed with my mum, who was my primary caregiver. So an enmeshment is exactly how it sounds. It's like when the parent and child are like that. So everything the parent feels, the child feels, and vice versa. So I don't know if you'd see yourself in that role, but I think parents who say, "Oh, my child is my best friend, we're best friends," they're not meant to be best friends. That's not a healthy relationship. If you get obsessive about your child, so if you're living your life through your child and you do everything for them, and you're externally focused on your child instead of internally focused on yourself. So codependents are very much about sacrificing for the other person to the detriment of themselves. And it starts off with having clear internal boundaries. So you've got to be connected up to your feelings. You've got to know what you like and what you don't like. So I didn't even have, I knew what my preferences were, but I definitely wasn't connected up to my feelings. And I don't know how many of you have read my post from last night, which was about anger. So I had to deal with a tricky situation with a neighbour, and obviously I had to stand up for myself. And any kind of situation where I have to assert myself feels confrontational, which it shouldn't be. She was trampling all over my boundaries, and I noticed that I felt angry. And instead of feeling the anger and owning it, which would enable me to set boundaries to keep myself safe, I wanted to stuff it down with food. So I was punished for being angry. So now I'm punishing myself. And that's horrible. And I'm saying to my little girl, shut up. No one will believe you. No one's interested. Stop making a fuss. Don't complain. And then the minute I set the boundary, I'm triggered. I'm terrified. I'm terrified of being told off. I'm terrified of getting it wrong. I'm terrified of having to deal with conflict. And so all of my feelings are all muddied and tangled up in my trauma, which obviously is a lifelong mission to unravel. But I know in families where you have poor emotional boundaries, it's almost like emotions are contagious. So, I'm just thinking, if my mum was in a bad mood and she was heavy breathing and hoovering while we were watching telly, she was unhappy, therefore we all had to be unhappy. We couldn't sit and enjoy the programme. I know with some parents, if their children are sad or their children are worried or their children are angry, the parent will not rest until that child returns to a more neutral emotional state. We can't eradicate feelings. We can't shut them down. We have to just let people feel their own feelings and understand them and process them so they can pass. So if you get obsessive about making stuff right and you put more into the relationship than the other person's giving, like you're overly responsible, that's a sign that you've got poor boundaries. But I've written some other ones down here. I find what helps is to work out what's yours and what's mine. So in an enmeshed parent-child relationship, there is no yours and mine, it's just we. So if you find yourself talking in the third person, we don't like this, do we, Freddie? We like this, or we do. Two separate people. And, adults who are really adults. And last night in my post, I referred to some adults as chadults, which is children trapped in adults' bodies. The ones who think they're entitled, who think they're special, don't take responsibility, who don't respect boundaries. But really, responsible adults are not intimidated or triggered by their child's need for independence and autonomy. They're comfortable with not being needed as a parent. Codependents are needy. They need to be needed. They need a project or a job or a mission because it takes them away from themselves. They're not connected up to themselves, which is really sad. And actually, when you admit or you stop being in denial about the fact that you're a codependent, there's a massive grief process there and forgiveness for yourself for not paying attention to yourself for so long, for neglecting yourself for so long and your feelings. So here's some examples of where emotional boundaries are weak or non-existent. There's non-age appropriate sharing. So are you confiding in your child about financial matters or problems in your marriage or problems with your friends or problems with your job? Not age appropriate, not things that children should have to be dealt with. Also be mindful of little ears, because if you're having a stressful time and you're vocalizing your stress a lot of the time, children are in your energy and they hear that, and they shouldn't be hearing stuff that's age appropriate that might frighten them or make them feel unsafe. That's a sign of weak emotional boundaries. Another sign is that you, because you're oversharing and you wear your heart on your sleeve, you expect your children to overshare, and you insist that they tell you everything, and you're very uncomfortable not knowing. Now, I'm triggered by not knowing stuff because in my family, it was my job to keep everyone safe. So I had to know all things at all times. I mean, obviously I didn't, but this is how I kept myself safe as a child, and I don't need to do that anymore. So now when I don't know something, instead of Googling it, which is, Google's not my friend, because when you're triggered, you're like, I need to Google that. I don't know the answer. Okay, so I don't know the answer. It's okay. There's loads of things I don't know. The sky's not falling on our heads. No one's going to get hurt or punished. We're all very safe, and it's okay not to know. And I tell that to my clients a lot as well, because they don't like not knowing. If you've got an anxious disposition and you worry a lot about your children, not knowing will probably send you off into a bit of an obsessive spiral. So that's another sign that you've got weak emotional boundaries, because it's like, my child is having a problem. How am I feeding into that problem? And if you haven't seen it, it probably would be helpful for you to check out the video, the free training that I did for parents on stress response. Go to my website and Google stress response free training, and it will come up. As I said, another sort of indicator is that you're preoccupied with your child's problem and you want to fix it, and you can't sit with the feeling. So I see this a lot when children are being bullied, okay? Or they're having a struggle with a friend that's making them sad. The parent cannot sit with the feelings of watching the child struggle, whatever that feeling brings up in you. Poor emotional boundaries. Your stuff is tipping into theirs. There's no fence there, visible fence. It doesn't have to be your problem. You are responsible to your child to support them through it, but you have to allow them to have their feelings, because without feeling their feelings, they can't set appropriate boundaries and take action and do what's right for them. I think I've already mentioned this one is overgiving without self-care. So if your self-care is poor, that is a sign that you've got poor emotional boundaries. You're not taking care of yourself. How can you take care of small people if you don't know how to take care of yourself? Not telling you off, because my self-care was rubbish as well. It's got better. And I think I've said before in here, self-care isn't just about having your nails done, having a bath. It's about saying no to people who make demands on your time. It's about respecting yourself and standing up for yourself and doing what's right for you and your family. So don't be doing it. If you're doing it because everyone else is doing it, or you're doing it because you think you should be doing it, that's a sign of weak emotional boundaries. You're getting sucked into how things should be. It's very hard to choose to do something that goes against the grain, the rest of society. But if you feel strongly that it's the right thing for you to do, you need to honour your own values and honour your own needs and do it. Do it. I do. And if you need to hire a coach or someone like me to help you to have the confidence to do it, then, I'm here to help you. The other thing is expecting your child to stop behaving or doing things which irritate you. So if you can't bear to see your child sad or anxious or angry, and you don't let them have their feelings, you punish them, or you try and shut them down, or you pacify, or you fix, your child will end up getting depressed, because all of those feelings will just get pushed down inside. And eventually, where do you think they're going to go? They're going to be emotionally constipated, and that's going to be very painful for them. And I see a lot of teens now that are starting to self-harm because they're full of unprocessed feelings, which they don't feel like they have a right to have. We're so judgmental of our feelings. We're making them right or wrong. They're just feelings. They're just energy passing through our body. They don't have to mean anything until we start attaching thoughts and judgments and stories to them. I'm just feeling sad. Okay, why am I feeling sad? Oh, I'm feeling sad in my chest. Okay, what colour is that? Oh, it's blue. Or oh, it's black. No, it's dark blue. Oh, I'm sad because, I didn't want that to happen, and I'm disappointed. And you just and you don't need to be weak or wrong or bad, especially with anger and sadness. They're the two. It seems to be more sort of accepted to have anxiety because we're all living with anxiety, which is also a sign that we lack boundaries, because actually, if we had good boundaries, we would be able to stop letting that stress in, wouldn't we? We wouldn't let it affect us as much. We would be in control and in charge of our own lives. We wouldn't be blown about by every breeze. I've said poor self-care, obsessive and living for your child, feeling overly responsible for the other person's feelings. So if somebody comes to you with a problem and they're feeling bad, you feel like it's your job to fix their problem. It isn't. It's their problem, not yours. And it's the difference, isn't it, between fixing and supporting. And I have actually posted and written blog posts about the difference between the two. And in my boundaries course, I talk about the difference between enabling your child's unhealthy behaviour, fixing your child, and supporting your child to come out the other side of their struggle. If you break your child's boundaries, you have poor emotional boundaries. So breaking your child's boundaries would be like if your child said to you, I'm just trying to think of an example of an emotional one. I suppose the way we break our children's boundaries emotionally is we guilt them or shame them, or maybe we ignore them or sulk or silent treat them into doing what we want them to do. Or we make them responsible for our feelings. So we say things like, oh, you're making mummy sad. Oh, that makes mummy angry. Listen to the language. I feel angry when I see you kicking the wall. I'd like you to stop. Oh, it seems like you're finding it hard to stop. I'm going to move you away from the wall, or you can stop by yourself. They're your choices, boundaries. Also, I think, if you're being a kind of emotional terrorist, so you're not giving your child the space to be with their feelings, and you're making them responsible for your happiness, just watch your language there. Because what will happen is if you have a massive emotional reaction to your child and you're saying you're making me angry, you're making me worried, you're making me sad, then what will happen is your child will start to shut down and they will stop coming to you with their struggles, or they'll start lying to you about what's going on, because they won't be able to cope with your emotional reaction when they don't even know how to process their own. So that's another sign of how we break boundaries. And then things like, letting them have a poo with the door shut, or having a bath, or when their bodies are changing, let them get dressed in their bedrooms with the door shut. Respect their personal space. Don't make them kiss everyone goodbye and hello. Don't make them come and play a game or do something if they don't want to. Well, I would really like it if you did come, but I'm hearing that you don't want to, so that's okay. I'll leave it open, and if you change your mind, we'll be downstairs watching the film, or we'll be downstairs playing Trivial Pursuits or whatever. Give them choices. We don't like being forced to do things that we don't want to do. I know you could say that in life it's unfair and sometimes we all have to do things we don't want to do. That's true. Sometimes we do. That's a different type of conversation. You need to learn how to set boundaries with a child that's resisting your requests. That's resisting your request. And that's normally about the relationship requiring work. Because when you've got a healthy relationship with your child that's based on love and not fear and control, and you've got a good connection with them, they will respond really well to your boundaries. They will respect you, and at their core, they want your love and approval. So they're not going to be looking to be defiant or piss you off, or it's never personal. And if you do take stuff personally, then, or you feel stressed when you have to say no to your child, that is also a sign that you've got weak emotional boundaries. Because other people's behaviour is never about us. And we have to be comfortable about saying the word no and hearing the word no. And if you see my Facebook post from last night about how I made a connection between why I couldn't access my anger and set healthy boundaries and where that comes from, I think you'll find that quite interesting if you struggle with anger too. I mean, we're all brought up, aren't we? Good girls don't get angry. Good girls are nice. Nice girls don't get anywhere, and if they can't set healthy boundaries, they get walked all over, and they get in abusive, controlling relationships with narcissists who will mess with their heads. And we don't want that for our kids either, do we? If we're adults and we consent to that, well, we don't consent to it, but we find ourselves in that situation, we will need therapy afterwards to mop up. So I guess also if you're a parent who overparents, so if you had your boundaries broken in childhood, you will see the world as an unsafe place. And therefore you will worry about your child a lot and you will overparent. But if you overparent, you're probably right up in their stuff, stopping them from feeling and knowing and doing and being what they need to know and discover for themselves. They need to work it out for themselves. That's how we learn best, isn't it? You know, how many times did your mum say to you, me, and you just thought, oh, here she goes again. But then actually when that happened to you and you had to work it out for yourself, you didn't forget it again. If it hurt, or it made you angry, or it made you sad, or it made you worried, you didn't do it again because you'd learnt the lesson. And we have to learn the lessons for ourselves. What have I put here? Yeah, they need to feel the natural consequences of their behaviour. So it's cause and effect, isn't it? Every time we behave in a certain way, there are natural consequences, and they need to feel the natural consequences. So, you know, if they've had an argument with their friend, they need to feel sad about it or cross with their friend in order to be able to process it and work out if they want to continue the friendship, if they want to forgive their friend, if they want, you know, they can't do that if you are fixing it for them, or you're rushing down the school to speak to the teachers, or you're ringing up the other kid's mum and saying, I think we need to have a coffee. Conflict is really good for children. It teaches them empathy, problem solving, listening, communication, conflict resolution. It's healthy to have conflict. And I shy away from conflict, which isn't really conflict. It's about having conversations where I need to assert my needs because of the way I was raised. And my Facebook post from last night explains that in a bit more detail. So I think what's really important is children need their feelings to be validated. And in my boundaries course, I'm teaching parents when to step forward and when to step back, you know, what is appropriate and how to manage that. I heard a thing on a podcast the other day that actually in family systems where you've got weak boundaries, things are contagious. They become contagious. So, you know, if you've got a trauma in your family, like grief, especially grief, I see this a lot. If you say you've lost one of your parents, or you've lost someone you love and you're grieving, you're not going to be emotional about it. You don't have the emotional capacity to be there for your kids, but they will pick up on their feelings. And if you don't have healthy boundaries with your kids, and it's the most sensitive children, normally they suck up, it's like they're sucking up your stuff. So I think when we think about boundaries, we think about physical boundaries, and mental and emotional boundaries are just as important. The other thing I heard on the same podcast was that in America now, which made me think, wow, they're so much further forward than we are. When veterans come home from war with PTSD, they are treating the whole family unit, because PTSD, trauma, bringing trauma into the home, the whole family sits in trauma. And that made me think, wow, that's why I'm doing family coaching now. Because if a family is experiencing trauma, which all families do, different varying, you know, levels of trauma, they all need help. Parents need help working out what's happened to them and how to either protect the children from it or explain it to the children so they internalise it in a healthy way. And children need someone outside of the family to hold their hands and walk them through it. So things like divorce and things like, like PTSD. So if you were abused in childhood, you have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And if you haven't looked at that and you haven't processed your stuff, that will be having a massive impact on your kids. And then also we have like generational trauma. So stuff that runs through families. So when you ring up to have a coaching session with me, I ask in a questionnaire, have you got any of the following things in your family? Eating disorders, alcoholism, divorce, domestic abuse. And actually what happens is that's just history repeating itself, and it's generational patterns. So we repeat that which we do not heal, and it comes through in our children, sadly. And that's why I feel I'm a massive advocate of preventative maintenance. Like, that's why I do the energy pod and the podcast, and I'm trying to educate people about the importance of their feelings and the importance of boundaries and all the things that come under emotional intelligence, social skills, body language, self-care, all of that stuff. Don't you think it would be helpful for you and for them to know it at a really young age? I do. So if anyone has any questions, even if you're watching on the replay, please pop them in the comments below, because I will come in, I will get a notification, I will see your question, and I will gladly answer it. I also want to remind you all that there's only a few days left to get your hands on my boundaries course, which is on offer. So if you go to the website smileyforlife.com/Jan 2019 offer, so Jan 2019 offer, you will see that when you buy my boundaries course for £149, you also get another £149 worth of coaching materials from me, which are around emotional intelligence and healthy connection, that healthy relationship with your children. So not that enmeshed stepping on each other's toes, because that does hamper. Nobody truly is happy in that relationship. It hampers your child's development, and it also stops you from having a life. It takes you away from yourself. So it's quite a big topic, but I think what I'm realising, I posted something up the other day about how we invalidate children through emotional and psychological abuse, which people didn't realise was invalidating. And quite a couple of people commented and said, oh, I say this, what else should I be saying? And it's like, well, if you had internal boundaries and you had healthy boundaries, you would know that saying that isn't the right thing to say, and you would know what to say. But actually in the boundaries course are a set of scripts of things to say, which are more validating, and they will help your children to understand themselves more, and they will keep you all safe and happy. Yeah, so that was a big old ramble, wasn't it? But really helpful. So I was noticing, that it isn't physical boundaries that you need help with. It is actually emotional and mental boundaries. That's where you're getting this, like catching each other's feelings, feeling each other's feelings. Oh, you hurt your brother's feelings. Did you hurt your brother's feelings? You didn't hurt your brother's feelings. You said something horrible to him, and he needs to take responsibility for his feelings, and you need to take responsibility for the words that are coming out of your mouth. Two separate people. I don't know. I've just got to have a little break. Yeah. So the boundaries course offer finishes on the 31st, which I think is Thursday. So it will finish at midnight on Thursday, and there will be a new offer coming out for February. So watch this space. And while I'm here, the energy pod is on at 5:00 tonight. We're having our last session on motivation. So we'll just be doing a sum up of what we've done so far. And then next February, the subject is on relaxation. So if you're a warrior or you're busy and you don't make time to just be still without need, or your kids tell you they're bored or they need to be on screens and they can't just be with themselves, that's a sign that they're not fully present, which is not healthy for them, and they're using other things to distract themselves. So I will be doing yoga, mindfulness, guided visualization, and we'll be talking about why we get busy and why we don't sit still and why we don't make time. and what we can do to sort of weave that into our daily life as a family. And you can bring blankies, and sometimes I get the parents to wrap the children up in a blankie burrito. I do a little bit of massage and, just reconnecting with each other in a really gentle, loving way. So we all need that, don't we? Right, thank you very much for your time this morning. I really appreciate it. As I say, any questions, please pop them in the chat roll below. Or if they're too personal, get in touch with me, lisa@smileyforlife.com, and I will try and help as much as I can. Have a wonderful Monday, a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.